But I just wanted to say, hopefully I can say this. I just wanted to say that I'm super excited about this because these are like three totally badass women in waste reduction, and I'm excited about this session because I feel like I've been banging the drum of, impact. So I'm very excited to be in the session. I'm gonna not say much else besides that. Cami, Tina, and Laura, you all know what order you're going in and all of that. So take it away.
Okay,
And
I'm
I'm
gonna
first, and
I'm gonna
I
share my
just
screen, right?
thank
Oh,
you. Yes, because I just lost everything because I tried to do something fancy in Zoom.
Mm.
is it okay? Okay,
Yeah, I think so.
okay, good.
Tina?
All right. Yes. Hi. Thank you. Welcome, everyone. I am Tina Schaefer from the Washington State Department of Ecology. I am here along with my colleagues, Cami Bruner of Repair Reuse Washington and Laura Novich of Hilo, New York. Next slide, please. So we'll start off with a little something fun. If you all would navigate to your React button at the bottom of your screen, and by a show of emojis, reactions, who here has ever dealt with, felt one of these things on the screen? Throw up any reaction, anything that you feel about one of these things. Are you frustrated? Are you struggling? Are you curious? Yes, thank you. Appreciate all of those. Oh, I love, is that a bowl of soup I just saw?
I
Love
think
it.
it was green tea.
Oh, wonderful. All right. So the next slide. Oh, yes, Mandy. Well, congratulations. You all are not alone, and this topic absolutely applies to all of you. I'll take the next slide. And we will get right into it. What is the Reuse Impact Calculator, or the RIC, as we fondly refer to it? Very simply, the RIC is a tool used to measure and calculate environmental impacts of reuse, repair, and sharing. It consists of a standardized database of common types of products with average weights and material compositions. And by entering the amount and category of an item, the RIC can then calculate and quantify the greenhouse gas emissions saved through reusing that item. And the environmental benefits from reuse and repair include the downstream effects of avoiding an item's disposal, as well as those upstream effects of avoiding manufacturing new materials. And then the RIC also looks at the social and economic impacts, which Laura will talk a bit more about in a moment. So the next slide, please. So why am I here? Why does Washington state government care about all of this? If you heard me speak this morning, you may have gotten a brief look into this in this place of reuse and repair and share. Why is a government regulatory agency interested? So I'm here speaking on this work a little bit because so far my team, the Recycling Market Development Center, has been the sole funder of the development of the RIC in Washington state. So a bit of background, the RMDC was created by our legislature and statute in 2019 in response to China Swords policy when they stopped taking many US recyclables. I mean, let's be real, what we really mean here is our garbage in most cases. And that just resulted in many tons of recyclable paper and plastic going to landfills due to a lack of our own recycling infrastructure in Washington state. And so our team has been working to boost those end markets for recyclables ever since. But frankly, as the RMDC started working around end markets, we found there's plenty of folks already working on those issues around the very common typical materials that go into the recycling bin, the cardboard, the paper, the aluminum. What what we needed to focus on was a shift to those difficult materials, the valuable materials that are already being tackled by our communities, things like textiles and tools and appliances through reuse and repair. And by demonstrating and measuring the collective impact of an entire sector that is already actively reducing consumption of new goods, it could mean more funding and support for existing and emerging efforts like Oregon Metro demonstrated in their session. It could mean better policy. It could mean active planning to increase integration of these activities in our infrastructure and our solid waste plans. And if we're able to standardize that measurement, we will be able to better support these activities. I'm seeing our agency director, Casey Sixkiller, speak to community resiliency. And not only does repair and reuse support ecology's mission to protect, preserve, and enhance Washington's environment by keeping materials out of the landfill, it lifts up those who are most vulnerable by building community resiliency. And within that resiliency, we in turn are able to create a thriving community and create jobs. That's circular economy, right? So resilience is central to the Department of Ecology's mission, and we have a duty to prepare our communities. And we can do that through supporting repair and reuse initiatives. Next slide, please. Speaking of
Yes.
resiliency, Cami, do you want to talk a little bit about what's going on here?
Yes, I can. If you all were able to join us for the last summit, you may have been able to watch or participate in the session from the Asheville Tool Library and Western North Carolina Repair Cafe. This was a slide they shared from their response efforts to Hurricane Helene. So in the wake of the disaster there, they set up mobile disaster response. So they were fixing generators and chainsaws. They were lending out equipment. And this is just a real-time, real-life example of how, again, our communities, our movement are already doing the work of caring for each other and making the world that we want to live in. In doing so, creating a lot of like deep community resilience. So we know that we can access the things that we need and we can rely on our neighbors. I think that was it for me.
Next slide.
Oh, and there, Dan from Asheville is speaking tomorrow in a session, so check that out.
I think I spoke to this about the ways that we can demonstrate impact and what it can mean and lead to for state jurisdictions, local jurisdictions. So we can go to the next slide. So who are the users, potential and the users right now of the RIC? We're talking about a lot of people in repair and reuse work, but we have a wide variety of users in many sectors across Washington state, and including Department of Ecology itself. When we first started thinking about building something like the RIC, we reached out to the reuse and repair community, and we ultimately decided to invest to bring it to Washington because the folks working in this space, we heard a lot of frustration when attempting to tell their stories and show their value. For instance, when applying for funding and grants, it's often suggested they use the EPA WARM, which is geared towards municipal solid waste and recycling. It doesn't address items that are mixed materials or reuse. So proof of concept for funding is difficult without accurate data. I think that's it for me.
Oh, Oh, and it's me again. So anybody who is in Washington is maybe already familiar with some of these images. They're pulled from the Repair Economy Project map, and we know we are very deeply familiar with the challenges that Tina just mentioned, but we're also like we're a powerful movement here in Washington. We've got a lot going on. Yes, if somebody can share the Repair Economy site, that'd be helpful. Um, but yeah, so how do each of these entities demonstrate what we're doing? We've got our creative reuse and maker spaces. We've got our community repair events, libraries of things, and reclaimed building materials. So it's it's a lot happening, and it's just a fraction of what probably is happening. These are only the known entities. So imagine if we could actually track all of that activity. Whoa. Okay, next slide.
Okay,
Enters
so
Laura.
yeah. So before I take you on a tour of the RIC and the impact report that we were just kind of talking about, I'll go through a little bit about how we got there, what we did first. So we didn't want to build the RIC in a vacuum. We wanted to build this for the folks on the ground doing the work. And so how do you do that? You talk to the folks on the ground doing the work. So we went about this using a qualitative research approach. So we conducted 5 focus groups, 4 interviews, and a survey that was distributed across the wide reuse network. I bet probably some of the folks in this space have taken that survey, so thank you for taking that. You'll see some of your contributions here. The majority of the folks that we heard from in the survey were nonprofits in the repair and reuse space. They came from across Washington state, but pretty concentrated in King County. The respondents primarily handled clothing, appliances, housewares, electronics, furniture, textiles, building materials, and products, the usual suspects, the top of the list there. We heard from survey respondents that some of the biggest challenges when it came to data collection was it's manual, it's inconsistent, it's pretty fragmented, it's hard to manage. Impact is hard to measure or even use. And then how often are they actually analyzing the data, if at all? And then also they just have limited tools and limited participation and resources. So all of those things don't support reliable reporting, unfortunately. We asked them how could better data benefit their organization, and the majority of them noted that it could provide them with more funding, applications, and opportunities. So really expanding their storytelling capabilities. And I was in the telling your story, your data story breakout group earlier, and clearly, this is incredibly important for folks. And so here we are. So we took all this information, we started to build the RIC. The RIC is a software tool and it's not an Excel file, but an incredibly simplistic way of understanding how it functions is that it's a calculation of backend data times uploaded data equals impact. But in order to determine what backend data we needed, we looked at what impacts were most important to calculate in this first iteration of the RIC. And I'll go into a bit more detail when I take you on a more in-depth tour of the impact report, but we organize the impacts into environmental, economic, social, and social economic section. So the most important aspect of the backend data was and is and will be the product classification and categorization system. We developed an 18 category system with 259 products. We developed our own unique categorization system to help develop a universal language for reused goods. The ultimate goal was to reduce the opportunities for human error from classification subjectivity when it comes to quantifying reuse data. So you call it a frame, I call it a picture frame. It's the same thing, but it gets logged as 2 very different things, unfortunately. Then when we had all of the products determined, we identified average weights, retail prices, material families, subcategories. We also obtained emissions factors for products, tipping fees, average hourly rate of Washington employees, and average volunteer hours for organizations. So you're probably asking where we got our emissions factors from. Right now we're using Fixometer's emissions factors since they're crowdsourced data and it's pretty transparent. and also very accessible. So there's no paywall. It's from the people, for the people. It's a bunch of folks gathering and sharing data through the Restart project. We're definitely not using the WAR model. But going forward, we'd like to partner with other organizations and departments and entities that are doing emissions factor analysis so that we can continue to make the data in the RIC more accurate and just overall better and more standardized. So I'm going to take you on a quick tour of the impact report since we've all been dying to see it. But currently the RIC is not publicly accessible. So the functionality is that it can only be accessed by folks with credentials. So that Cami, I mean, also Tina and myself, but it's Cami at the moment, right? So once an organization's data has been obtained and uploaded into the RIC by Cami, we can run a report. So there's a bunch of filters that we currently have in place that allow us to basically manipulate the data to either be super specific or very general, and everything in between. So for example, we could run a report for repair organizations in King County handling clothing in 2024, or we can run a report for just your organization. But what I'm about to show you is a report that we've generated that's all of the data in the RIC thus far. And so that's all of Washington State's reuse data that we have. So those are the numbers that you're going to see. And just to note specifically, the data is only representative of 12 organizations. So you saw Cami's maps before, and you know that there are way more than 12 organizations participating in reuse in Washington State. So what we've captured is how I would describe it is not even the tip of the iceberg. It's like if you could see the outline of the tip of the iceberg, like from space. Like that's honestly how it's so little, but it's a great start to just have something in general. So let's run through this report and see what it looks like. I will also, based off of that other session that I was in about storytelling, the visualizations, I'm just going to mention that this is our first iteration of the RIC. So the reports aren't really stylized yet. There's not much visual excitement. Well, I guess it depends what you find visually exciting. I think graphs and these things are, but it's not like what she was depicting in that storytelling session. But that is coming in the future. So that's obviously on our radar and something that is crucial for this movement in this area and industry. So the first section in this report is the breakdown of the total count of reused items by product category. This is the breakdown of the total weight of reused items by product category. Sorry. This is the breakdown of the total weight of reused items by subcategory. And then there's the breakdown of the total
Laura,
weight.
could you back up?
Yeah.
Something I wanted to note because it might be a little weird for folks. We do include consumable supplies and materials, especially referencing like disaster response scenarios. There are a lot of goods that are coming through, being donated, and seeing that they can then be reallocated. So we do want to capture those things in addition to truly like reused goods.
Yeah, sorry, I flew past that too. Yeah, this was also learning experience from my past of working. I'm in New York City, but working with the Department of Sanitation and some of the disasters that we had, and the second disasters, the donations that you have to deal with afterwards. And so I think it's important to also prepare for the future of how can we also quantify stuff like that as well. This is the breakdown of the material family, the total weight of reused items by material families. And then this is the environmental impact section. So this will give you the total greenhouse gas emission savings, the total weight diverted, and the total item count of the items reused. And then the economic impact section. So it gives you the total retail value of the items reused, the total associated repair costs that organizations may or may not have reported, total funding organizations reported from different sources like grants, donations, and stuff, their total profits and income generated from reuse efforts, and their total membership fees, and the total avoided disposal costs. And in the social impact section, it gives you the total amount of patrons, participants, customers, whatever you want to call them, the amount of borrowers for lending or rental programs, total number of volunteers, and then the total volunteer hours, which is organizations can either put in their own number or we use our own default number for that. Then in the social and economic impact section, we have the total number of paid volunteers. So volunteers that receive some form of stipend or payment. The total volunteer value. So this is the amount of volunteer hours times the hourly rate of Washington employees as of 2025. And then we have the total number of paid positions of jobs. And then I think that's it for me. Cabby, back to you.
Oh, right, right. Yes, so in addition to the repair economy site, I oversee the repair and reuse Washington ecosystem. So it houses access to the impact calculator, which again, as Laura pointed out, currently is just access to me. But to be developed in the future to be more of an interactive portal for organizations to log in and map their own data. It has an instance of the developing materials, Washington Materials Marketplace, and then it links back to the Repair Economy Hub. So if you are in Washington right now and you want your data run, reach out and we'll make that happen. And I know I'm behind in getting some like informational how-to sessions set up for our Washington groups. I totally will do that as soon as I can, so that we can walk through some of the how-tos because there are, as Laura alluded to, idiosyncrasies in how we're all capturing data and what we call things. And it's helpful to just have a little hands-on session. So I do hope to do that in the near future. But thanks to everybody who already has submitted data. And it is challenging. I see your effort. I really do. Trying to wrangle all of those like pieces of paper that you got from the repair event and downloads from whichever platform you're using to log tool transactions. It's a lot. So thank you. I think that was it. Oh, no questions.
Well, I was going to mention too, like kind of what's next for us in the repair impact, the reuse impact CAMI. Um, as Cami just mentioned, we're still working on education and outreach. Right now, we're really creating what success with the RIC will look like because there is no baseline. Nothing like this exists to quantify it. So we're creating it. And like we've stated a few times, there's only 12 organizations of the 150 something that Cami has currently mapped with partial data of the like thousands that exist from our building wide clothing swap at ecology to pop-up repair shops to fix-it fairs that happen every single day around Washington state. So we are looking to further invest. The RMDC is investing more money in the next phase. We are looking for partnerships, like Suzanne mentioned in the Oregon Metro session. They have been looking at this and are interested. We've talked with King County and City of Seattle, so we are discussing partnerships outside of Department of Ecology to expand and get the RIC to the next phase to serve more folks and to potentially tell that story and lead to more and bigger things.
Nice. Excellent. Thank you all so much. That was awesome. And I'm so, like I said at the offset, I'm so excited about this thing. I'm so excited that it's finally happening. I wanted to ask or relay a question from Amanda. She says, any thoughts or recommendations to gathering demographic info of borrowers, and that would help identify impact to underserved identities/communities? Don't you all chime in at once?
What? Sorry, I spaced what?
That's okay. So Amanda Shaver says, any thoughts or recommendations to gathering demographic info of borrowers? I'm guessing that's for like tool libraries, or libraries of things. And then for the purposes of identifying impact to underserved identities and or communities.
There are many ways to answer this. Who would like to take a stab at it? We did have this discussion, and we elected not to do that for reasons. Does
Is
anybody
that
want to?
is that something that we could contact you directly if we wanted to know more information? Is that better?
We can talk about it. There were concerns about how that data might be used, um, that could be damaging to the communities that it was originally intended to serve. So,
Okay.
electing not to collect that data at this level, if organizations themselves wanted to collect it, then that being at their discretion. But we are not tracking that. Uh, Tina, I feel like you can answer this better than I can. Maybe because because it's sensitive information, basically.
Fair.
That's the short answer. It wasn't very
Okay.
short.
I think that's fine. Let's leave that there. There's more stuff we can talk about. We've been asked it in two different ways, but basically, so Curran says, when the tool is ready for prime time, will it be shared with other states for charge? And then Sonali says, is there a template for data submission? Will you accept data from other states or cities?
Um, I mean, Cami or Tina, I think that's more of your. Oh, well, in terms of the template, yes, there is a template for how you can upload the data, and we're going to continue to make that as easy and as seamless as possible for organizations. But in terms of state lines, I think that's more Tina and Cami can speak to that more.
Um, that's going to become an interesting issue and idea because we do love the idea of partnership, but I think as we grow, we'll have to put some differentiation because as state government, as we look towards growing policy and telling our story, we we need to look at um, Washington organizations. And so if we would love to take um, anyone's information, but then there's going to have to be very careful, like who is this coming from, and we would have to run very specific reports. So we'd love your info if you want to give it, but then yeah, it'll be some very careful tracking that we don't have set up quite yet. But like I said,
Sure.
as we talk partnerships, we're here for it.
Nice. I love that. So we've got 3 minutes. Is that right? Are we going to 2:30? Okay.
Yes.
There's too many things in my head right now, so apologies. Um, and then Anna had a question. I'm gonna make sure that Anna is able to unmute. There we go.
Hello. Hey guys. So Anna from Reykjavik, Iceland. We also work on emission data calculation and so on. And a big ass fight we have been having within the organizations we work with is how do you account per item per use? Because there's a big debate between do you only account the first time the item is used by one person, or do you account every time the item is used? Because obviously then it becomes a over accounting and becomes a little bit of a greenwashing thing. So we had a very strong discussion, to say lightly, which was kind of how we're going to approach this. So, and how we will allow, for example, we have our own database that we allow people to use. How are we educating people to use the results of the database so it doesn't really account for, the over usage of the numbers and exaggeration? So how are you guys monitoring that? Because there is a huge difference between the weight for sure, the items replaceability for sure, but then the emission factor based on item share versus items you owned. That's my question. Just curious to see what your side is.
Um, to be honest, I feel like that's a never-ending question and a never-ending this like cycle that you can just spiral out of control. Like where do you end at that point? So this is our first iteration of the RIC. So it was really, can we actually create this was the important part here. And going forward, we would look to include more information like that. But I think sometimes, I don't think we're there yet. That'll be the next iteration where we look further into the actual usage of items. But it's really hard when you have so many different organizations that are all over the place. So, um, in a way, I feel like sometimes that can hinder the full use of a tool like this for organizations if we get too in the weeds with everybody. Um, but it is a good point of like what is usage, I guess? What is reuse? What is rental? And how many times? And what does the actual emissions factor look like that? Or what does the emissions look like for that? So
Nice.
And
I don't know if that
I
was an
think
answer,
that's going to
but
be a good opportunity for us and for this tool to partner with like the Tool Library Alliance to understand what's the answer that you all land on for it. And we integrate those learnings into the back end of the RIC.
So I
Um,
would love to keep going, but part of my job is to cut us off here.
that's true.
And I just wanted to point out, Cam, I think you saw it already, but we have renamed it the RIK, so it's the Reuse Impact Cami. So I thought that was
it's
really cute
accurate.
and
Yeah.
clever. Meet y'all back in the lobby. Meet you in the next session.